keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
Super Bowl 59 is set. We now know who will be competing between the Kansas City Chiefs, going for a historic, never been done before three-peat as Super Bowl champions, and the Philadelphia Eagles, which makes this a rematch from just a handful of years ago when the Chiefs bested Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts and company on that occasion as well. But to get to the Super Bowl, the Chiefs had to once again go through Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And once again, as we've seen 3 previous times prior to this weekend, Andy Reid and company got the best of them. And I am here to get the sights, the sounds, the heartbreak, and the joy from what it felt like on the sidelines from our man, James Palmer, NFL insider to the stars. Yeah. James, you've been at every single one of these Chiefs-Bills playoff kind of matchups here. Yep. What set this one apart?
Well, I'll start with the similarity first. It was a great game, like all of them have been.
Yeah.
Right? Every single one of them has been outstanding. Neither quarterback has ever played poorly in this game, which makes it even more fun to watch. And it was the same as the others, to where Patrick Mahomes now has beaten Josh Allen 4 times in the postseason, NFL record. Nobody's ever done that. I think there's like several other instances with 3. I think like 9 other guys have beaten somebody 3 times, but nobody's ever done it 4. And so what stood out, in my opinion, is we saw the same thing happen as has happened before. And this is where Broncos fans want to get to. This is where anybody in the league wants to get to. In the biggest moments, the coaching staff on the Chiefs make the right calls, and their players make big plays. Like that's really what this league comes down to, is when your best players make plays in the biggest moments, and your coaching staff, which is why we're always watching this coaching cycle so much, your coaching staff makes the right calls. Once again, Steve Spagnuolo dials up the perfect play defensively and pressure against what Buffalo was trying to do. And it's happened a lot with what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have done on their side. But I would say in this one, Josh Allen was given an ideal opportunity to win the game. Like an ideal opportunity to win the game. And they didn't go out and do it. And so I think Buffalo played well enough to win, but the way it's happened, and this happened to Broncos fans, with a blocked field goal at the end of a game, special teams played a point again, right? 2 stops on 2-point conversions, that's 4 points right there. You could almost say, the way things go for the Chiefs, Justin Reid lining up offsides on a extra point actually changed this game in the Chiefs' favor. Like, that's the way it's gone for the Chiefs, because then they go for 2, which you should go for 2, right? You get put at the 1-yard line with Josh Allen. You should go for 2. But that changed the course of it. Then you get a monster return, and just, they find ways to be good in every facet of playing the game, and they never hurt themselves. It's the same recipe. And I think everybody should start paying a little more attention to those things because it's why they've stayed good.
Well, on the opposite end of it being Josh Allen, there has to, at some point, this kind of roadblock that you've seen. I mean, 2021, 2022, 2023, he loses in the divisional round, he being Josh Allen. He finally breaks through that, and we get to a conference championship. We're 1 game away from a Super Bowl, and it just happens again. And you mentioned it. He's never played bad. Although I think if we got the Josh Allen performance that we got in the 13 seconds left in the game against this version of the Chiefs, I think that would have been good enough to win. It's not that he didn't play bad. I just don't think that it was as superhuman as some of the previous performances that we've seen. But I also think the Bills as a team aren't maybe as skilled in certain areas as that particular team was. So, but if you're Josh Allen, there's got to be a feeling of a curse of some kind, right? Like what more can a guy do? It's not as it was when we saw with the Bills-Ravens game, where if you wanted to, you could turn and point to a couple of Lamar Jackson turnovers that were like really critical moments that helped change the trajectory of that game. He just didn't have that. You had the drop by Dalton Kincaid, which wasn't an easy catch. I think it was more difficult than maybe the Mark Andrews 2-point conversion catch that everyone was ready to slam him over. And it just felt like it's sometimes hard to reconcile a loss when you can't really point back to too many things that contributed that negatively.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part. I mean, if I'm looking to pick things apart, James Cook had 13 carries. He averaged 6.5 yards a carry. Like, I'd like to bump that number up a little bit. I'm standing on the sideline. It's under 2 minutes to go. I'm right there on the 25, and I watch Ty Johnson run out on the field to start the drive. And they give it to him on the first play of that final Bills drive. And I'm like, where's James Cook?
Right.
Like, just little things like that, if we want to, like, nitpick. I think they ran the ball really well behind their really good offensive line. I would have ran the ball more. When did they have their most success? Coming out of halftime, the 12-play drive that's got 11 runs in it. They have an opportunity on the next drive where they have 9 plays, 7 runs, and it gets stalled on the fourth down stop, whether you want to say it was a first down or not. My opinion is it's almost too close to call. I believe he had it, but I also understand the call of him not getting it. I also think you should get, like, Josh Allen should get it, honestly. I give the Chiefs credit for making the stop they did twice on it. But, like, maybe run the ball a little bit more. You were having a lot of success with it. We knew the defense wasn't outstanding. We knew third down was an issue for this Bills defense for sure. I think Kansas City went 5-9 or something like that, 6-9, something like that. So they were good on third down. This defense credits themselves with making turnovers to make up for some of the third down issues. They got one, I mean, and it helped them. But yeah, they didn't play bad. That's the thing.
Right.
It's just when games need to be put out, like that's what Mahomes and company do. Like when they need a big play and a big moment, that's what they do. Like, I think we all are dreaming, maybe because he's a great guy and maybe it would help break up the dynasty. Like, Steve Spagnuolo needs a head coaching job. And maybe that helps all of us because it's just, you have just a mastermind, maybe the greatest, like, playoff defensive coordinator ever, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
No, these are the conversations you're having as it relates to the Chiefs. And ironically, that's a segue into something else that I wanted to ask you was, if the Chiefs three-peat and become the first NFL team ever to do so, and it encapsulates a run of 5 Super Bowl rings in a 6-year span, missing only, what was that, 2021 was Bengals Rams?
When Burrow, yeah.
When Burrow did it. If that is indeed how this plays out, I don't think it's that big of an argument to say that enshrines them as the greatest NFL dynasty of all time. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, 5 rings in 6 years and you're the only team ever to win 3 in a row?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty damn good. I think you definitely are there for sure. I mean, the Patriots lasted longer, and it almost had like 2 dynasties that were separate.
Yeah,
like
it was Brady having a Hall of Fame career in 2 different decades of his life.
Yes, he really did.
Yeah.
I think the other part that you can look at it is, if they win this, there is a legitimate chance that Mahomes can catch Tom Brady, which nobody ever thought was a possibility.
Nope.
And now you have a chance because they're tied essentially with 3 apiece, and they're the only 2 guys to, obviously, only 2 guys to have 3 before they turn 29.
Right.
And then I believe Tom didn't win his 4th till he was like 37. So he had like a 8 or 9 year stretch where he didn't win one.
Yeah. That was where you started to see like Roethlisberger and Manning.
Yeah, and you see all these other guys come in. So like Pat can get 4 with like a 7-year jump on Brady, like before Tom got his 4th. So I think that's the other part to look at it, to where like we never thought somebody would have an opportunity to kind of chase down Brady in terms of rings. This would make you start going,
I said it when he won his final ring in Tampa and then retired for real. I said at that point, and it was said somewhat in jest, but I felt confident about it. I said, other than Patrick Mahomes, I don't think there's a human being alive on planet Earth right now that will challenge Tom Brady's championship rings total there. Like, I don't think there's a 2-year-old somewhere in like Wisconsin that's like, no, like they have not been born yet other than Mahomes. And even when I said that, I didn't think Mahomes would catch this kind of momentum this quickly.
I think because they're wired the same, Richie, honestly. Like let's look at it and like, okay, what does Sean Payton and Bo Nix need to build in Denver? What are the Ravens try to build with Lamar Jackson and Harbaugh? What does Josh Allen need to do to get over the hump? What do these two guys have that all of these other places are chasing? And I've been around both of them a ton, and I would say there's a few things that really stand out to me. The first one being winning really matters more than anything, and it's on a level that is almost like hard to describe. I don't want to knock Peyton Manning. I don't want to knock Drew Brees. I don't want to knock any of these guys. They put up unbelievable stats consistently for really long stretches of their careers that were just unbelievable. If you look at the way Pat and Brady have done it, it's like they figure out what their team is and they adapt to what the team is that year. There were a number of years where Tom was like, our defense is unbelievable. We're running the ball well. Fine. If that's what it takes to win, hand the ball off 40 times. Fine.
Right.
Again, nothing against like Breeze or Peyton or anything like that. You wouldn't see that from those teams. Like, we win because I put up numbers. So that's our best chance to win. The adaptability of both of these guys. Pat plays the position far differently than he did in 2018 and 2019. And
it's not the gunslinger running around.
Making crazy plays, gunslinger, downfield, bombs. Like, he threw for under 4,000 yards this season. First time in his career. Last year, he understood that Isaiah Pacheco was literally the identity of their offense, and he did not mind running a really good system to hand the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco and figure out different ways to win games. That was always Brady's superpower, is figuring out what worked that season. There were years he lit it up, right? Randy Moss is lighting it up. There's other years where he's like, if running the ball 40 times, that works for me, works for us, we'll do that. I think that part of it is what stands out. And the other part, and I think Bo has a little bit of this, by the way, like, they have an ability to relate to every single guy in that locker room.
Yep.
And they're just one of the guys. I don't know how both of them do it. They're two of the most famous players in the history of the league. Right. They are just one of the guys in the room. And I think that's an issue Philly has a little bit, because I don't think Jalen's one of the guys at all. And so I think that galvanizes your team as well. I think Bo has a little bit of that to him. Like, there's guys in that locker room I've talked to that are like, this dude's special, man. There's something about him that's special. And so you're trying to find those traits that just, in a league that is so tightly wound and has an ability for just the littlest advantage to help you get over the hump, these guys have those little nuances to their game. I mean, Pat was on the podium while I'm standing there last year, and he's saying, I got to get 3. He's like 5 minutes into winning 2 back-to-back, and he's saying, I got to get 3. So, like, they're just wired a little differently.
They are.
You're trying to figure out a way to get into that group.
I was kicking around earlier today too, on the same line of like, if the Chiefs are to three-peat and whether or not that solidifies them as the greatest dynasty in NFL history. And we've already alluded to a three-peat would definitely put Patrick Mahomes in position to match or catch or surpass Tom Brady. And I started thinking to myself, if he three-peats and becomes the only, because it's when you're talking about GOAT debates, it's what unbelievable, unrealistic, amazing thing do you have over the guy who already has a resume of unbelievable, unrealistic things? And that would be one if you're Patrick Mahomes. And then, as crazy as it sounds, I started to think, like, let's say, even some people may argue that alone would do it, even though he's only got 5 rings right now, but he three-peated and was a part of the greatest dynasty in NFL history, that could do it. But even if it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 more years, could we be looking at a situation where Tom Brady, with his unbelievable amount of championship and sustained success between New England and then into Tampa Bay, is the shortest lived GOAT, like, of all time? I mean, like, really, though? Like, he has the shortest reign. People still consider, by and large, Michael Jordan the greatest player of all time, although between him and LeBron, it's kind of this tug of war.
Oh, don't say, man, if you want to polarize 2 groups of people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and they both like to think that the other group cares more, but it's not true. It's equally.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah,
it's equally catty. But yeah, Michael Jordan. I mean, whoever you want to consider the GOAT of baseball, forever it was Babe Ruth, right? He had decades and decades before the likes of like a Barry Bonds maybe came along, or Ken Griffey Jr. You can even go like obscure, like individuals, what Tiger Woods and Serena Williams, or Lewis Hamilton is the undisputed GOAT of Formula One and ongoing. Muhammad Ali in boxing, all of them I think would have had a longer run than like 6-7 years.
Yeah.
From a public perception standpoint. And it just blows my mind that Tom Brady, who some have considered the GOAT of GOATs,
Yeah.
might actually have the shortest lived tenure in that seat.
Wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like Tiger still doesn't have the most, he does not have the most majors.
No, it's not like a Jack Nicklaus situation.
But he had the more dominance than anybody. And somebody made this analogy, honestly, and this was very interesting. They're like, I remember even Scott Van Pelt, that was like, Josh Allen is essentially one of those guys that was playing in Tiger Woods' prime.
Sure.
Where you could just be unbelievable and you had a great career and nobody...
Yeah, like a Phil Mickelson, right? Like
nobody saw any championships. I think hockey's the only one where it's like completely undisputed.
Yeah.
Like it's just like not even, there's nobody else even in the conversation.
His nickname is the Great One.
Yeah, his nickname is the Great One.
like...
So, I mean, that might be the one. But yeah, like, I think the Brady people would continue to argue, right, that the sustained success that occurred.
You got to get to
years.
You got to get to 7. You got to, like
yeah, it was. But yeah, what was there? And here's the comparison between the two. Like, what did we always see with the staffs that were in New England? Nobody ever really left and had a great coaching career.
No.
Has anybody left Kansas City during this stretch and been successful? Eric Bieniemy's had a terrible run since he left.
Right.
Matt Nagy, I think, got a raw deal. He won Coach of the Year in Chicago, honestly, and then a double doink, and he's like out. And
I forgot about that.
Spags hasn't gone anywhere for some unbeknown reason. And the group has just stayed together. That's the hardest part to do. I would almost say, side tangent, Sean McVay is unbelievable. To have the number of people come out of your building all the time, repeatedly, and get poached, and you continue to be a playoff team and continue to be unbelievably competitive, that's unbelievable. Andy's had the same group this whole time. I mean, Bill had the same group forever. That's why Josh McDaniels is back in New England. It's a great hire by Mike Vrabel. He's never getting a head coaching job again. Vrabes is like, my offensive coordinator's here.
Yeah.
Done. I mean, it's probably why Nick Sirianni's sitting there I got Vic Fangio for as long as Vic wants to coach, because Vic does not want another head job. So, that's what you're looking for is those are cheat codes, honestly, in this league.
Before we move on to a couple of other headlines, just your overall, because you're obviously very tied into Philadelphia as well, and you spent a lot of time in Kansas City. So these are two teams that you're intimately familiar with in a lot of ways. So what is your initial vibe, your initial read on this upcoming Super Bowl 59 matchup as someone who's been behind enemy lines on both sides plenty?
Yeah, if anybody wants in-depth stuff, it'll be coming out all week. Steve Smith and I taped for 3 hours this morning about all the different nuances all the different nuances that we see in this game. I would say Philly has the best roster. It has maybe the best roster I've seen in some time, top to bottom. But the advantage for the Chiefs is their quarterback and head coach are probably much better than the quarterback and head coach in Philadelphia. I think the chess match of Vic Fangio versus Patrick Mahomes is going to be just so much fun to watch. I don't know if people understand, because I've talked to Pat about this, how much he hates going against Vic Fangio. That time in Denver, I know he repeatedly beat Vic. It was a headache for him all the time. You know that stretch? What was it? Vic was 21-23, I want to say, or something.
Yes, right in there.
Right in there. During that stretch, Pat had a lower completion percentage, passer rating, yards per attempt versus Vic than the field. Together.
Well, it's part of how the narrative starts about how the rest of the league is copying the Vic Fangio defense, the two safety shell.
So that's going to be a really interesting one. I think Kansas City has to blitz. They really do, or else they're not going to get past this Philly offensive line at all. And does Jalen Hurts make some plays against the blitz? I think that's the deciding factor of this game, honestly. If Jalen Hurts makes a play or two against the blitz, nobody is better at getting unblocked, pass rushers, whether it's a safety or a corner or whoever it is. I think they finished with 58 unblocked pass rushers this year, the Chiefs, which is just an astounding number. But they just couldn't the Chiefs can't get pressure with 4 or 3. They just can't. So can Jalen Hurts make some plays against the blitz? And then secondly, I would say this. The 13 carries, that's why that sticks in my craw a bit for James Cook. Saquon averaged a career-high 21.6 carries a game this year. There's no way Saquon's carrying the ball 13 times in this game.
No.
You know what I mean?
Nope.
And so both teams stay on the field. They're the two top teams in 10-play drives. So if you have a 3-and-out, you're screwed. If you turn it over, you're screwed. Neither team really turns it over. So I'm looking for Philly to just keep Mahomes off the field. I think that's a big part of this game. And you run Saquon. And, oh, yeah, if we run the ball, we also create explosives in the run game, unlike any other team we've seen. So I think Philly has a legit chance for sure. But if it's close, who are you going to go with?
Mahomes.
And everybody on the chat, I already saw it. It's going to say like Mahomes and the refs.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to go with the
Because what happened last time they were in the Super Bowl? I was on the field. It was a phantom holding call.
Flag. Yep.
Like holding call that lost the Philly that Super Bowl. So like you would assume, just due to, and I know people in Kansas City hate this. The players I talked to, oh man, the Schefter tweet. Boy, did that rub them the wrong way going to the AFC Championship game. A little added motivation for those guys.
Yeah, great.
But if you think...
slighted.
Yeah, if you... I know, right? But man, anything you can do to motivate yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Just due to the track record, if it's close, you're going to assume the Chiefs win. Mm-hmm. But I do think Philly has a chance to like win by 2 touchdowns. Just by the way they're built.
Yeah, from a skill position standpoint and in the trenches, Philly's as good as any team in the NFL, and I think almost across the board, there's a lot of areas where they're better than the Chiefs. I mean, Chris Jones as a standalone player is one thing, or what have you. But for
to show you how good they are, Richie, you do this, and I'm just going to ask the question, and you do it, because I want to hear what you say.
Okay.
In the NFC Championship game, how many Washington Commanders start for Philadelphia? I'd say the quarterback.
Yeah. I was gonna say, is it more than 3? Is what I was.
I don't know if it's more than 3.
My head. No, it's. I would say Jaden Daniels, yes, but
maybe Terry McLaurin, but like
that's what I was trying to weigh. Yeah,
Smith and AJ Brown are ones. Like those are ones. So like just to show you how good the roster is. That was the NFC Championship game. 3, 4 guys. Start.
Yeah. Maybe crazy. Somewhere maybe something on the back end defensively, but I don't know. Yeah, it's not high. Yeah, it's not high.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I want to spin this into Denver. Mm-hmm. And because I was thinking about this before we came on, how both of these teams are built. It's predominantly through the draft. Mm-hmm. If you look at these players, they're I mean, go look at that offensive line in Philly. Mailata, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, all draft picks.
It's a Howie Roseman clinic.
All draft picks. Offensive line in Kansas City, almost the heart and soul of it, of Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith draft picks, like Chris Jones draft pick. Like, you have to hit. And I think what I'm interested in moving forward with Denver is, and you mentioned Howie Roseman, what does Howie always do? Howie always collects picks. Mm-hmm. He always is dealing to get more picks. More darts, more picks. And Denver has lacked picks, obviously, for a variety of reasons lately.
And it's interesting because I think that exact philosophy, the more darts, more picks, that is inherently how we've seen George Payton operate. I mean, that's how he's wired. And you have a situation now where you have Sean Payton, who's I just need 1 dart if I hit the bullseye. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And you have George Payton that's like, I'd rather throw 8 or 9 and just see, hope I can get a double 20, triple 20 in there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to watch how they've kind of balanced out. By the way, one other note that I saw as it relates to the Chiefs and the Bills, that just, again, if you want to just talk about being a Bills fan or being in Josh Allen in that situation, I had actually forgotten about this, that it was the Bills who traded back with Kansas City to allow them to move up and draft Patrick Mahomes in the first place. Yeah. We made that joke about the Bills trading back with the Chiefs so they could get Xavier Worthy and how unbelievable that was. Well, how about when they did it for who may end up being, after next weekend or 2 weekends from now, the greatest quarterback of all time?
Yeah.
It's just hit of misery.
It's unbelievable.
James, as it relates to the Las Vegas Raiders, who made a big splash in the last week or so, bringing 73-year-old Pete Carroll and that gum-smacking chomp out of retirement.
I love it.
To be on the sideline in Las Vegas. And it's a move that I think is mirrored exactly in the vein of what the Broncos did with Sean Payton, what the Chargers did with Jim Harbaugh, which is we are bringing in an established CEO retread head coach to be a complete ground level culture rebuild, which I think they are desperately in need of. And I think it in the situation of the Broncos, not as much the Chargers because of Herbert, who was already there. One of the first moves that entails is bringing in a quarterback who the Raiders are in, if they choose to do it in the draft, primarily are in a position to do so. But there's also the concept of a potential reuniting with Russell Wilson, who we've heard Steelers front office and ownership say we're maybe bringing back Fields or Russ, but not both. So given the way the season petered out, there's potential for that, and mended fences, as we've heard between the two of them. They've got the 6th pick in the draft where they could try to reach up for a player like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. There's also the potential maybe to bring in a free agent like a Sam Darnold, who may be looking for a new home. You know, this is a team that's got $73 million in cap space to play with, and it's not uncommon to do a free agent, veteran bridge, and a drafted quarterback scenario. What's your vibe on what Las Vegas might be thinking at the quarterback position?
Well, first off, what a murderous row of head coaches for a division. I've never seen anything like this in terms of the track record of the 4 individuals that are coaching in the same division.
668 regular season wins, I believe, between the 4.
It's just unbelievable. And I love that Pete's back in, honestly. I think Pete's good for the NFL. Pete's fun. Mm-hmm. Pete's great. He brings a great culture. It's funny, I talked to somebody with another team who was like, I don't know why people are questioning this. If you just exclude the age, which we all know Pete acts like he's 52 and not 73, will be 74 in September. He's the best candidate available. And it's not close. He's an all-timer. He's got pelts on the wall. He knows how to do it. So I think this is a Tom Brady move, 100%. What have they done since Brady and the other minority owners have gotten involved is there's been less volatility and less impatience and much more stability within the Raiders organization. I think you view them differently now, and who brings all of those things? I think Pete does. And so when you look at the quarterback spot, the first thing I look at is, how does Pete look at quarterback spots? Well, his philosophy always has been you put as least amount of weight on the quarterback's shoulders as possible. You make their life as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. That's always the way Pete has played it. We're going to play good special teams. We're going to play good defense. We're going to run the ball. Obviously, that style, eventually, him and Russ started butting heads a little bit about it because Russ thought, I can take these leaps in my game. And Pete, I think, as we all know now, is probably was right. No, you should play the position this way.
Aged very well.
I mean, that's like a Pete Hall of Fame credential right there. I made Russell Wilson a borderline Hall of Fame player, and look what happened when he left me and started playing at a different style. We saw Russ go back to the Pete Carroll style essentially this past year. So that's the way Pete does it. So I don't think he's looking here going who can throw it all over the yard and change everything for us. I think there's so much to build there. But I also know, he's wonderful with tight ends. And they got, in my opinion already, maybe the best tight end in football in Brock Bowers. Mm-hmm. So how do you go about this? I don't think he feels like he needs right away, the ultimate game-changing player. I think he could see Sam Darnold. You got to pay for Sam Darnold, but I think he could see Sam doing that. I know people don't, people are looking at the Russ, reunite.
I'm not buying it.
Do you really see it?
No, I'm not.
If that's what you're trying to sell to everybody at Raiders Nation, and I know Pete doesn't care about that, but is that really how you're going to start building this thing?
Listen, we know now because of his transition to the Broncos and then beyond to the Steelers, that you can talk about mended fences and you can talk about bread being broken and I love Pete, I'll go back to see him, and anytime me and Richard Sherman you can do you can do all of that. But at the bottom line, these are two individuals where one in Russell Wilson went directly upstairs to the front office and to team management and tried to get his head coach fired to essentially unlock him. And then we saw that quarterback lose that battle and that head coach jettison him and kind of fleece the Denver Broncos in hindsight.
They did.
Even though they didn't end up doing a ton with it. They had the opportunity to with the amount of picks and stuff that they got. I think there's only so far you can mend a broken fence without it still just being kind of a crappy fence.
Yeah, I think you're mending something that cool, it's mended. But I don't really feel like playing.
I forgive you. I don't want you to. I don't want you to move in with me.
Yeah, it's we have a mended fence, but we're going to stay neighbors. We're not, And so it's going to be interesting because there's a number of teams that need quarterbacks. There's a lack of quarterbacks available. I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens. I think the Vikings are actually in a very good spot, honestly, with 2 and nobody else. really seems to have something there. I think that's going to be an interesting landscape for Zach Wilson, in all honesty. Like, how curious our team's going to be about a year under Sean Payton. And not going to lie, like, didn't he have some flashes in camp? There were moments in camp where you're like, this is probably the best arm talent here in camp.
Especially while Bo Nix was catching up to speed. I definitely. With
he's got wow throw ability. I
watched Zach Wilson throw a ball and be like, man, that's pretty.
Yeah,
that is
100%. So I wouldn't be surprised if some teams are curious and he goes elsewhere next year for a chance to start, a chance to do something. And the Raiders are right in that mix with 8 other teams that are kind of like curious about their quarterback situation. So obviously Denver's in a better spot just because they have their quarterback in place. But if you don't think Pete's going to kind of change this thing pretty quickly, I don't think you know much about Pete Carroll.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that we've seen it time and time again in the NFL that they have
a ton of money.
Yeah, the right or wrong move or decision, whether it's a big signing or a draft pick or whatever, can take a team from the basement to the relative attic just like that. I mean, it doesn't.
A good new GM that I think is really well respected around the league for sure.
Yeah, and there's synergy with Brady and Spytech, and now Pete Carroll, and you see all these things aligning, and those are the recipes for success. And some of the things we're crediting and pointing the Broncos' quick turnaround in the last couple of years with Sean Payton because of Greg Penner and Sean and George Payton and everything aligning, and then you get it, some above average production out of a draft pick like Bo Nix, and suddenly you're a wild card contender, and everyone's talking about you totally differently. So I'll be fascinated to see how it plays out. I think the AFC West, as we've seen it happen, a handful of times over the last decade or so, is going to be a kind of potential force to be reckoned with in the AFC because of the collection of knowledge and talent on the coaching and roster level that exists within there. James, always appreciate our Tuesday catch-ups. Love having you as a resource for us and all of our listeners and all the knowledge that you bring around the league, and I can't wait to catch up with you again next week, my friend.
Sounds good. Can I make one last point?
Yes.
Because you made a really good point. I think there's something to be said about coaches that have just done it for so long. They not only know how to do it, they know how it works for them. And I think these cultures are different, what Andy Reid's built, what Pete likes to build, what Jim Harbaugh likes to build, and what Sean likes to build. But they all know exactly what they're looking for. And I think we've learned that very quickly with Sean Payton here in Denver. And I think we're going to continue to learn it there's some key free agents that could be kept or on their way out of town. And you'll get a further understanding about Sean knowing who works for him, what type of players work for him. And he's done this remarkably quick. And I think it's because he knows what he's looking for. And that's the advantage that I think these 4 guys in this division have. They know exactly what they're looking for and what works for them. And they all don't do it the same. They do it very differently. And I think that's cool that the league is built that way, that you can do it your own way and build a completely different culture than everybody else. And you can win games that way. And I think it's also the advantage in the hack that we're realizing is this group knows what the hell they're doing, man. They know. And there's always the question mark with the young, hip coordinator coming in. And oftentimes that guy doesn't know what he's looking for yet. Because he's new into it. And so I think that's what makes this division really, really cool.
It is. And you if you're a young and up and coming coach, you got to take your lumps. And this is the exact opposite for this crew. To your point, they know what they're looking for. They've seen it. They've found it, and they know what to do with it once they do find it. And I think that the arrival of Pete Carroll in Las Vegas is a little bit of a warning shot over the bow for the likes of the Broncos and the Chargers, but even the Chiefs to a certain degree of hey, you better stay above water because there's sharks swimming if you don't. And for a team like Denver, who was right on the cusp of being on the wild card, and it helped that the Raiders kind of bottomed out, and you already lost twice to the Chiefs. It's okay, hang on a second. We experienced a nice little punch up there, and we're feeling pretty good, but we could just as easily end up back down on the mat as the team below us now is looking on paper to get a whole lot better.
True. It's
Love
really
it.
Cool.
Love it.
I don't know. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a crap division and you're just going to get a chance to just march all over everybody, or
the AFC South, you're
man, you got just every week it's we got Pete Carroll. We got Andy Reid. We got
Twice a
Jim
year.
Harbaugh.
I mean, it's like it's as close as you're gonna get, I guess, in the NFL's equivalent to like being in the SEC. It's like, yeah, we can be the best team in the Big 12.
Whoa! I think we know who won the national championship, Richie. So
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
who
I'm
was
a
having
Big
pretty
Ten
heavy
guy. I'm a Big Ten guy, but I feel like I lose that argument to the general public more often than not.
we do. We do
Yeah.
pretty regularly, And now my Buckeyes are going to lose both coordinators. Yeah, we'll see Chip Kelly back in the NFL probably.
Probably. Well, James, always a pleasure catching up with you, my friend, and I can't wait to do it again next week.
Sounds good.
The rest of
we'll
you
be
out
doing
there
it from Super Bowl week. I'll be in New Orleans when we do this next week.
Oh, that's perfect. Even better. All right. Well, love that. Already a lateral tease there to next Tuesday where we will catch up with James Palmer in New Orleans. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.